Good morning, or maybe good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this recording. We actually did this exercise yesterday as a group, but unfortunately, the audio in that recording didn't come out great. So I wanted to go ahead and re-record this so you guys can get the best quality training possible, because I do think that this is something that's pretty important and something that will be helpful for your business. So we took the premise, and it comes from Will Guidara's Unreasonable Hospitality. So the backstory on this is Will Guidara was a manager of a restaurant that he subsequently became the owner of. And he got it in his head that he wanted to be the best restaurant in the world. And so he started looking at what these other restaurants that were already in the top 50 restaurants in the world, what they were doing. And he found that these restaurants all had something that they were just absolutely relentless about, meaning food quality or service or something else. Like they all had something that they were just all in on. And that is what made them the best. And so what he decided was he was managing this restaurant in New York City that was kind of known for its dining room. It had been from like the 1920s and, kind of the heyday of New York. And so he had this really iconic dining room. And he's like, okay, but a dining room is not going to be enough to turn me into the best restaurant in the world. What else can I do? And so he started thinking about service and hospitality specifically. And in doing so, he decided that he was going to have the best service and the best hospitality of any restaurant in the world, and he was going to be number one. So fast forward, he gets his staff, he has this big staff meeting and says, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. And I need buy-in from every single one of you, because ultimately this is not something I can do by myself. I need every one of you, from the dishwasher to the busboy, to the cook, to the kitchen manager, to the dining room manager. All of us have to be bought into this vision in order to make this work. And so he started with this concept of unreasonable hospitality. And the idea is that we're going to take every single touch point. So he sat down with his staff and said, map out every touch point that you have in your business. And this is kind of what we did a little bit yesterday. But I want you to think through every touch point, from when the customer calls to make their reservation, when they show up, when they get greeted by the host or hostess, then they go to the bar and wait for their table to be ready. And then they get taken to their table and the menu gets put in front of them. The napkin gets laid in their lap. The server comes to take their drinks, right? So think about all these touch points that happen over the course of the dining experience. And the premise was, we want to take this and elevate each one of these impactful moments. So I'm going to take this and apply it over to real estate. But in doing so, we're going to look at this both from the buyer side as well as the seller side. So if you're just a buyer's agent, or if you're primarily a listing agent, we'll help you walk through this exercise to kind of think through what this would look like in your business. But I want you to kind of use this as your premise when we're thinking about those key touch points. Now, I identified 6 on the buyer side and 6 on the seller side. There may be other touch points in your business that you think would be better applied. And by all means, use this same methodology and apply it to whatever those touch points are. So it's very important that we understand, excuse me, and it's very important to understand that this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. At the end of the day, you're going to be able to tailor this to your business in a way that makes sense for you. So there's a couple of things here that we want to start with. We want to notice what others overlook. So if your buyer mentions loving coffee or golf or fishing, pay attention to that. The seller mentions that they're stressed out about having to move their kids. Okay, cool. Maybe that's something you can do something with. Or the customer's nervous about the process. Maybe they're a first-time home buyer, or this is their first time selling a home, and they don't really know what to expect. That uncertainty can be very painful and very powerful for the customer. Or maybe the seller's emotionally attached to the home. We get that a lot. Hey, I brought my kids home in this house. I'm very attached to it emotionally, whatever the case may be. And we're going to talk about this specific scenario a little bit later. One of the other things, though, before we move on, I wanted to show, this is called a Your Favorite Things sheet. And a lot of real estate coaches and things like that have taught agents to incorporate this in their business. So the first time that you're talking to somebody, you would send this to them and just say, hey, listen, this is just a quick little thing for me to get to know my customers better. It has their name, the property address if applicable, and then it's just some of their favorite things, their favorite candy or snack, their favorite coffee, favorite restaurant, favorite dessert, favorite hobby, favorite sports team. And then down here on kind of the back side of this sheet or on page 2, do you have any children? And if so, names, ages. Do you have any pets, names, types, and anything else that we should know? Now, you do this at the beginning, and then the customer fills it out, and then most of the time they forget about it. And that's kind of what we're hoping will happen here. And I'll tell you guys why. So let me go back to the Unreasonable Hospitality. We talked just a moment ago about not every step matters equally. We want to focus on those key emotional moments, first meetings, moments of uncertainty, moments of victory, and the closing. So what a lot of agents have done is using that favorite thing sheet when they have their first meeting. Maybe they show up and bring their customer coffee, or, once you go under contract, maybe you send them their favorite candy, or, once they get to inspections, you send them their favorite flowers. The night before closing, maybe you have their favorite restaurant catered into them because they've been packing, they've been moving, and the last thing they need to worry about is cooking dinner, right? So think about it like that. The agent is collecting this information and then just basically sitting on it. You don't really mention it again, but you use this as a way to create those moments with your customer that are highly elevated. So for those of you who are watching this recording that didn't see the video I sent out kind of as a precursor to this, we talked about Will Guidara when he was giving this speech. He had talked about looking at those moments of the transaction with his customers in the restaurant that were pain points. And so to him, the most painful moment was dropping off the check, because obviously now you've had this great dining experience. Now I've got to deliver you the bad news that you now owe me $200, $300, whatever this dinner cost, right? So what he found was when he came and brought the check, and I say he, but it's his entire staff. So when the waiter or whoever would come and drop the check, they would bring a really nice bottle of cognac, and they would have a glass for each person at the table, and they would pour just, a little sip of this cognac, and they'd set the bottle in the middle of the table. And he would say, listen, this is your bottle with my compliments. The check is here whenever you're ready. Take your time and enjoy. Oops, sorry, let me mute these. There we go. Okay. So, have this with our compliments, right? This is for you to enjoy. Now, the reality is most of the time, the customers never drank more than that one sip of cognac that was put on the table. So his cost of this was minimal. But even if they had consumed the entire bottle, maybe it was a $20 bottle at his cost, it was pretty minimal, right? But it was that expression, that gift of, you're bringing me something for free. And it's a pretty nice something, arguably. Like, it's a nice bottle of cognac. In the same vein, they did a study, and I can't remember who did it, and I apologize, but they found that in diners, when the waiter or waitress brought mints with the check, the tips were 18% higher. So it was just that act of giving something that was enough to make people want to reciprocate that. Sorry. So we want to take these moments and we want to elevate them. We want to make them more impactful. We want to make them stellar, basically. And that's the goal of all of this. So think about those times in the transaction where those moments are elevated. You want to make the gesture about the customer, not about you. So this is super, super important. Will stresses that hospitality should never feel transactional. So even though he's doing this and he has an agenda in the way he does this, it never feels transactional. One of the other examples that he gave was he had these customers that were on a food vacation from Europe, and they had toured all the best restaurants in New York City, and his was last before they headed to the airport. And his waiter happened to overhear that they mentioned, we've had all these great dining experiences, but the one thing we never got was a New York hot dog. So the waiter came over to him and said, "Hey, Will, I just overheard this. I don't know if we can do anything about it, but it sounds like an easy win. Can we do something?" So Will runs outside. He goes to the nearest hot dog cart and he buys what I guess New Yorkers call a dirty water dog. And basically, it's like those traditional carts that you've seen in the movies, or if you've been to New York, you know what we're talking about. They're just the $2 hot dog that you buy right on the street, right? So he goes out, he buys this hot dog, he brings it into his chef, and he goes, "Chef, I need you to cut this hot dog into 4 pieces, and I need to make it look like our presentation." And the chef, apparently in no uncertain terms, told him to go kick rocks. But after a little bit of begging, the chef was finally like, "All right, fine." So he took some ketchup and put a nice smear on the plate and put a smear of mustard. And, this is like a Michelin star restaurant. And this chef is having to serve a New York hot dog, but he did it. So the waiter goes out and drops this plate in the middle of the table and says, "Hey, listen, I overheard you guys saying that you hadn't had a New York hot dog yet. And I just can't let you leave my city without having this experience. So please enjoy this on us." Again, it's a $2 hot dog. But he said that these people raved for the rest of the meal. Like they have this Michelin star, $100 meal, whatever. And they were raving about this $2 hot dog because it was the act of meeting the need where it existed. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not looking for social media content. We're not looking for you to be able to brag about this on social media or your website or whatever else. That's not what this is about. That's missing the point. And unfortunately, there are a lot of real estate agents out there that are like, "Hey, look, I'm setting up for my customer's closing and I got them this TV and I got them this and I got them this and I got them this and I got them that." That's not what this is. This is about doing the gestures that are about you. So these agents that are out doing some of that social media marketing, there's a place for that. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. But what we're trying to accomplish here is that we want to make these gestures about the customer. We're not using this to make it about us. So again, a transaction has about 40 operational steps, but there are some that are much more emotionally driven for that customer. So they're going to remember the beginning, right? When you're first starting to look at the properties, the most exciting step, maybe that's when you get them under contract. The most stressful step, maybe that's the inspection. The victory, okay, cool, my offer was accepted, we're now under contract. The ending, we're getting ready to close. We're starting this next chapter in our lives, whether we're buying or selling. These are the moments that we're trying to capture here that are going to be the most extraordinary, the most impactful for the customer. So we want to find ways to bring hospitality to these moments so that the entire experience feels extraordinary. That's kind of where we're coming from with this. So my challenge to you as we go through this exercise is, when you're going through this process, I want you to stop and think, what is one small thing that I can do in this moment that the customer wouldn't expect? And before we move into the next section, I'll share this example too. So Will mentioned that he was selling a New York apartment and buying another New York apartment that was like $2 million. He had been moving up, he's doing well, whatever. So he goes through the process, and as he's selling his one apartment and buying the next, he goes through to the closing on the apartment that he's buying. And he says that every time he's bought or sold or anything with a real estate agent in New York, they always gave him like a nice bottle of champagne. So he walks into the final walkthrough or whatever, expecting to see the bottle of champagne on the counter, and it's not there. And he's like, what the hell? I'm buying a $2 million apartment with this agent and he can't even get me a bottle of champagne. He's like, and I started to get pissed, which, I get, like, it's an entitlement issue. Like, the agent didn't need to buy me anything. I just sort of expected that they would. So we're doing the final walkthrough, whatever. And then I go to open the fridge to make sure the fridge is cold, like they do. And everything that had been in his previous fridge was brand new in the new one. Every condiment, the bottle of wine, the bottled waters, everything that he had. Well, come to find out, every time the agent had gone over to show the apartment or whatever, he had taken a picture of this guy's fridge. Right before closing, he texted this to his assistant and said, everything that's in these photos, I need you to go buy. So the assistant went out, bought all this stuff, and basically stocked his fridge so that as he moved into this new apartment, he didn't have to worry about it. He didn't have to move all these condiments, which, it could be a pain in the butt. You've got to keep stuff cold and, all of this. And he said it was so impactful. It probably didn't cost that much more than a nice bottle of champagne, but just the fact that it went so far above and beyond to make that effort, to go through the forethought of taking pictures of his fridge and capturing all of the condiments and the bottles of water and, whatever else was in there. Those are the types of things that we're talking about here. So what is something that the customer wouldn't expect? That's where your favorite things sheet will come in pretty handy. So we want to reserve our biggest gestures for the moments and people where they will matter the most. Hospitality should scale with the moment and the client. As I mentioned, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So if you specialize in farm properties or high-end condos or first-time home buyers or whatever, what you do for your customer might be completely different. For example, like if I've got a multi-million-dollar buyer, what I do for them may end up being different than what I do for a first-time home buyer because expectations are different, budgets are different, whatever the case may be, right? So don't think about this as a one-size-fits-all. Think about this as, how can I tailor it to my business? So the strategies and resources are obviously going to vary depending on the property size, the price point, the buyer dynamics. The same way that certain gifts might work for a condo buyer that wouldn't necessarily work for somebody buying a farm, right? So think about it that way. These are just ideas. This is not intended to be a script. This is not, again, me telling you how to do this. This is just me laying some groundwork for you to decide how you want to run your business. Now, for each of these 6 examples on the buyer side and the seller side, there's 4 tiers. One is a thoughtful effort that doesn't cost anything. One is what we would call low cost, $10 to $50. Moderate, $50 to $150, and high touch would be $50 to $500 plus. So again, it's not about choosing like, oh, I've got to do all high touch items or whatever the case may be. It's just about giving you some ideas that based on your customer, based on their experience, based on, whatever, you could decide what the best thing to do for them would be. So your methods and means may be different from one transaction to the next, but every customer deserves the same level of thoughtfulness. That's what we're going for here. Will says, unreasonable hospitality isn't about spending money. It's about choosing the right moment and responding with genuine thoughtfulness. So let's go through 6 emotional buyer moments. And again, these are by no means designed to be a script. You may have completely different moments that you choose to focus on, and that's totally okay. This is just an exercise that we went through to kind of get you thinking about what are some things that you could do in your business to help elevate this customer experience. So the first consultation, the emotion would be trust and uncertainty. They're not sure what to expect, and they're trying to decide if you are the agent they want to work with. No cost would be a personalized recap email that summarizes the buyer's goals and next steps. So once you have that first conversation with them, you might summarize an email that said, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We just had this conversation. I just wanted to make sure that I got it all and I didn't miss anything. What I heard you say was you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Carol would. You want a pool, you want this, you want this, you want this, and your budget is this, whatever, right? So you send kind of a recap email, just making sure that you cover the items that are important to them, making sure, more importantly, that you didn't miss anything. You would be surprised how many agents don't make notes, and a lot of times they miss something that they then have to go back and fix. So for the customer, being able to set this expectation up front is going to build that trust with you. A low cost would be maybe you find out how they like their coffee, and when you show up for a first showing, you show up with coffee for them. And maybe a printed buyer roadmap, like, hey, here's the list of the properties we're going to see today in this order, whatever the case may be, right? A moderate cost might be a first-time buyer kit with a moving checklist and a local service guide. Maybe you go around, if you work a certain geo area, right? A certain city or a certain, area, whatever. You could go around to local restaurants and you could maybe get coupons for discounts on food or whatever the case may be. You could deliver that to the customer. Again, it's going to be an investment of time more than money, but that's why I put that in the moderate, because it's going to take some time, which is going to equate to some money. Now, a high touch, a custom relocation guide if they're moving from another city, a professionally designed home buyer planning binder, a gift card to a local coffee shop where future strategy meetings can happen, things like that. And obviously the purpose is just to establish that you're invested in their success from day one. This is what we're trying to convey here. The second one would be the first showing day. So, this first one would be at the first consultation. This is your buyer consultation. The first time you're showing them property, they're excited about the possibilities. So you have a home comparison sheet. This would say, here's a quick summary, not just an MLS printout, but like the first home we're going to look at is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with a pool that sits on a corner lot, fully fenced in. The roof was 2018, the HVAC, like as much information as you can get about the home in advance, put that on a summary sheet. That way, as they're looking, they can compare apples to apples. A low-cost option would be to have a cooler with water or some snacks or something in your car that after the first showing, you say, hey, I got you guys some water. We've got some snacks. If we're looking at 5 or 6 properties today, I want to make sure you guys stay hydrated. Here you go, right? Something that doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's going to be impactful for elevating their experience. A house hunting kit. Something that I thought of as we were going through this is like, I carry my Florida Realtor notebook. It's just a little, like it's got a pen attached to it. It's just a little notebook with lined pages, but I carry this with me everywhere. This is just my notebook that I keep notes in. I, make down appointments and whatever. Like this is just what I carry. So maybe having something like this that's branded to you, it has a pen or something with it. It's a little notebook. And you give that to your buyers on the first time they're showing up and say, hey, as we go through these properties, make notes about the home, things that you want to remember. Hey, I really didn't like the purple paint in the bedroom. I really loved the backyard. The kitchen was fantastic, or, it didn't have granite, whatever. Because what's going to happen is once they've looked at 5 or 6 properties, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that third one had the great backyard. Oh no, that was the second one. Oh, the third one was the one that had the great kitchen. No, that was the 5th one. And they start to kind of like create this amalgamation of one home that had everything they wanted throughout the 5 homes that they looked at. So just giving them something like that, you would buy it for $5 or $6. Like it's not a huge expense, but it's something that would help the buyer to feel like you're invested in their success. Or a high touch would be to arrange transportation for a tour. Now, I actually, when I was with Remax, I had an agent that had a multi-million-dollar buyer fly in from another state. And she coordinated to have a Lincoln Town car pick them up at the buyer's hotel and drive them around to the showings. And what it did was it allowed the agent and the customer to sit in the back of the car in between showings and talk about what they liked, what they didn't like. And they didn't have to worry about, anything else other than just talking about that experience. Now, again, it might have cost the agent, $100, $150 for the day, but with this buyer who's buying a multi-million-dollar property, it's a worthwhile investment. Because again, this agent, or this buyer rather, was so blown away by the fact that the agent would do something like that for them that, absolutely it established that relationship that buyer was never going to work with another buyer's agent again. If they didn't end up buying on this trip, in the past, maybe they would have called another agent who had a listing that they were interested in seeing, and they would have just worked with that agent or whatever. But in this case, this buyer had established the fact that they were the only agent that this customer was ever going to want to work with again. So for a couple $100, yeah, on a, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 commission, it's a pretty worthwhile investment. Maybe there's a curated neighborhood tour. So if they're looking in the same area, maybe you coordinate to stop and have lunch with them at a local restaurant and, buy their lunch. Again, not a huge investment, but something that's going to have a pretty high impact on their experience. The purpose is to turn house hunting into a memorable experience rather than another errand. You guys see where we're kind of going with this? Number 3 would be offer submission. This is a period of anxiety and anticipation. So a no-cost option that you could do would be to make a video exactly like I'm doing now. You just go on your computer, go into the recorder, and create a short little 1, 2, 3-minute video explaining your offer strategy. This property's only been on the market 7 days. It's aggressively priced, so we're going to come in with a full price offer because you need closing cost assistance or whatever. Talk through the specifics of their transaction to let them know why we're doing what we're doing. A lot of times agents don't really have this conversation, and it's the buyers just sort of go along with it. At low cost would be like a 1-page offer summary. Moderate would be like good luck cookies or a small celebratory treat. You could just send them like, hey, I just submitted our offer. I'm going to send you some cookies. Good luck, right? Something like that. High touch might be send dinner delivery the night of the offer submission so that they don't have to worry about the response, or a gift card to their restaurant so they can relax while they're waiting. Basically, we're just acknowledging the emotional stress of this moment. That's kind of what we're going for. Another touch point would be when the offer is accepted. This is a period of victory and relief because they're like, oh, we finally got the offer accepted, especially in a market like 2020 or 2021 where, homes were just flying off the market and there was multiple bids and stuff like that. We're not necessarily in that market today, but we are starting to see properties that are getting multiple offers again. We're starting to see a more competitive real estate environment. So, this may be something that would be impactful in your customer's journey. A no-cost option would be to send a personalized celebratory message. We just, hey, congratulations, the buyer or the seller rather accepted your offer. I just wanted to let you know I'm so excited for you. I'm going to be here to support you throughout this process. Let's go get this done. Quick and easy, but again, it doesn't cost you anything. A handwritten congratulations card. Nobody does handwritten cards anymore. So having that is something that people wouldn't expect. It's a gesture that they're not expecting. And that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here, is surprising them in ways that are making this experience elevated. A moderate cost would be a bottle of champagne or a dessert delivery, or reservations for a celebratory dinner or a gift basket, different things like that. Just things that you can do to acknowledge that you're not just celebrating the win for them, you're celebrating the win with them. You're in this process with them. You're helping them through it. You're emotionally investing as well, within reason. They're not in this by themselves. That's what we're going for. During the inspection period, this is a period of anxiety and doubt. Once that inspection is done, walk them through the inspection report together calmly. Something that would be a low cost would be to create an inspection guide with common findings. Now, if you guys have an inspector that you've worked with, I would bet that they would probably generate something like this for you. Like, here are the top 10 things that we find in almost every inspection. And here are ways that you would address them, right? Something like that, so that the buyer doesn't feel like they're just drowning because they just got this 93-page report that in their mind means this house is going to fall off a cliff tomorrow. They don't understand that. And so as the professional, this is something that you can come in and help them feel better about. So maybe you do coffee or lunch during the negotiation, or pay for a contractor's second opinion. If something came up that you, like, they're not sure about, maybe the HVAC's not working right, you could actually coordinate to have the vendor go out and address that. Something like that, or another consultation. So you just want to be the calm, trusted advisor during these stressful moments. Excuse me. And the sixth one that we came up with was closing day or move-in. Like, this is a pretty significant milestone. Something that wouldn't really cost you anything is a handwritten thank you letter. Low cost would be a framed photo of the home. One of the things that somebody else had done, and we talked, or actually, we'll talk about this on the seller side. A welcome basket or a personalized home gift, or a high touch would be something like, I'm going to have a cleaner come in and clean the property for you before you move in, or a gift card for an interior designer consult, or a smart home package. Some agents will buy like a ring system for their customer, or local restaurant gift card bundle, different things like that. So again, the idea is to make the homecoming feel special. Going back to the example of the champagne, that's what the buyer was expecting. When Will was buying his apartment, he expected to see the bottle of champagne there. And if he had gotten it, it would have been like, okay, cool, that's exactly what I expected. But the key to unreasonable hospitality is to go above and beyond, to do more than what is expected. And as we know, in real estate in general, the bar is set pretty low. There's not a lot of great agents that are doing this. So by taking these moments, by making this unreasonable hospitality in your business, you're going to create these fans that are going to refer you to everybody that they know. And that's the goal. So again, we don't do this to be self-serving. We do this to elevate the customer experience, with the byproduct being, now people are going to want to work with us. And I mentioned this yesterday too, and I haven't mentioned it yet. When you're doing this level of service, do you think they're going to balk about your commission? No. Because whether you're charging 3% or 4% or whatever you choose to charge, it doesn't matter at that point. I gave the example, you could go buy a Kia or you could go buy a Bentley. Both of them are going to get you from A to B. Both of them are going to have locking doors and air conditioning and automatic transmission and whatever, right? Steering wheel. But when you go to have that car serviced, your experience is going to be vastly different. When you go into the Kia dealership, cool, like, thanks, have a seat, have some cold coffee. We'll take care of you when we can. When you walk into the Bentley experience, you're going to get the, hi, Mr. Blackall, we're so glad to see you. Come on in. We've already got you set up in here. Is there anything we can get you while you're here? Do you need any coffee? We've got espresso or whatever. Would you like some fresh Danish? This is the experience. Hey, do you need a loaner car while your car's here? If you've got stuff you need to go do and you can't wait, can we get you a loaner car? Can we, take you somewhere? Can we do something for you? That's the level of experience. But you're talking about two very different price points here. And that's the same thing with the level of service that you're providing in real estate. Is those people that are spending the money on the Bentley experience, they're not focused on the costs as much as your Kia customer. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with your Kia customers, your first-time home buyers, your, $100,000 condos and stuff like that, vacant land. That's totally okay. But what the level of experience that you would give a Kia buyer versus a Bentley buyer are not going to be the same. So as you're thinking about your business, as you're thinking about the customer that you're providing for, think about what you would need to do in that experience to do the unexpected. That's what we're trying to take away from here. So emotional moments on the seller side, the listing consultation. Maybe they're meeting with 2 or 3 different agents. So what is something that you could do in order to get that seller to know you, like you, and trust you? Now, again, let's say that you've done this for another customer, you've provided this experience for them, and they have now raved about you to their seller friend. And that's how you got this appointment. Do you think that seller is going to be as concerned about your commission rate? Absolutely not, because they already know what they're going to expect. So if this is your first time doing this, or if this is something that you're just starting, you're going to need to convey that in ways that are unexpected to this customer to be able to create that repeat business. So obviously, almost all of us are going to create a highly customized CMA, right? Every agent that walks in the door is going to have a CMA, but a printed marketing plan. You know, there's a lot of sellers out there that say, cool, what are you going to do to sell my house? And the agent sort of hems and haws and like, oh, we're going to put it in the MLS, and it's also going to feed out to Zillow. And I do a couple of social media posts, and maybe we do an open house. Okay. That's not a great experience, right? But doing an actual marketing plan. Here's what we're going to do to get your house under contract in 30 days or less. On day 1, we're going to do this. On day 4, we're going to do this. Like, having a highly detailed plan shows the seller that you know what you're doing and you're the expert. A professionally designed listing booklet. You know, maybe you have those folders that are branded to you or to the business or things like that. High touch would be a pre-listing consultation with a stager. You know, you actually bring a stager in who goes through the house and says, hey, this room's a little bit too cluttered. I would take this chair out of here, or let's take these things off the wall. A lot of times what happens is they're going to give the same advice that you would give, but it's kind of like, and I had this example when my daughter was younger. We would tell her not to do something. We would tell her over and over and over, go in one ear and out the other. Then all of a sudden she goes to school and she hears it from her teacher, and it's like she's heard this for the first time. This is the same example. Like, if you bring in a professional, a stager or somebody else, the level of receptiveness for receiving that news is going to be completely different than if you were to deliver the same message. So this is something that you might be able to think about including in your listing presentations. Basically, what we're doing here is demonstrating our expertise and our preparation. Preparing the listing. While doing this, they're stressed and overwhelmed. So you might have a staging checklist, or something that I always provided for my customers was a 10 to 15 point pre-showing cleaning checklist. So this would be like, make sure the beds are made, make sure that the top of the TV is wiped, you know, make sure the house doesn't smell bad, sweep and vacuum the floors, those kinds of things. Just quick and easy things they can keep on the side of the fridge, where when they go, okay, cool, we've got a showing tomorrow, let's make sure before we leave the house today, the beds are made, the floors are vacuumed, you know, everything's been wiped down, whatever the case may be. Sorry, my allergies are killing me today. These are the types of things that you could provide. Another one is moving boxes or packing supplies. So I actually saw on TikTok an agent who has a moving boxes that were branded to her and her business. So every time she took a listing, she would have these mailed to the customer. And it had like 8 or 10, you know, different size boxes. It had packing tape. It had labels. And the whole thing got drop shipped to the customer that was branded specifically to her. So that's something that, again, it doesn't have a huge cost to it, but it's something that it's going to be impactful for your sellers. Within the high touch, maybe you pay for a partial staging service or a landscaping refresh. You notice like, hey, the flower bed's out front, everything's looking a little dead. I would like to have my landscape company come in here and just put in some fresh flowers for you out front. Would that be okay? Cool. Maybe it costs you a couple $100 or whatever. But again, depending on the value of the listing, this is a worthwhile investment into this customer. This is something that you could talk about as part of your listing presentation. Or having a professional handyman service for minor repairs. Maybe we're suggesting that they have a pre-listing inspection so they know what's going on. And a few of the items that are called out in that, you just say, you know what, I've got a handyman that'll come over and take care of that. Don't even worry about it. Now what you've done is you've taken that stress and anticipation about what's going to happen in the future, and now we've already solved for it. That's what we're going for. The listing launch. This is a period of high anticipation. So maybe a no-cost option would be your home is live announcement email. You could send a small congratulatory card. You could send flowers, or a broker preview event, or a catered open house for the neighbors. These are the types of things that you could do once your listing goes live. You want to create that excitement because, again, we're not the real estate agents that are just going to throw this in the MLS and wait for our phone to ring, right? We're providing unconventional levels of service. We're going above and beyond here. We are being unreasonable with our level of hospitality. That's what we want to do. When the offer comes in, we would obviously do an offer comparison sheet. I think pretty much anybody watching this video already does that. Like a seller net sheet. Here's the offer. Here's the number of concessions. Here's the proration. Here's effectively what you could expect to receive at closing. Obviously, we're not going to know their mortgage payoff, so that factors in whatever. A low-cost option would be a printed negotiation summary. Hey, here's what I would suggest we counter back at, and here's why. Giving that to them. A small celebratory gesture. Maybe you send them some sort of celebratory gift. High touch would be dinner delivery after accepting a strong offer, or champagne to celebrate. Those are the kinds of things that we want to elevate. The next would be inspection negotiations. Again, maybe we've already had a pre-list inspection, so we've already kind of solved for this. But let's just say for whatever reason we didn't, right? So we've had this inspection, and now the buyer comes in with a list of repair requests. No cost option would be to walk through the request clearly and calmly. One of the things as real estate professionals that we need to remember is this is not our house, right? We are the professional. It's our job to get through these obstacles and to keep the deal moving forward. We are not getting emotionally involved in this. So we're going to walk through it clearly and calmly. We'll provide some decision framework. Maybe we could arrange contractors to come in and provide estimates, or a handyman to come in and address some of these things for them. And that's where the high touch, pay for a contractor consultation to resolve these items quickly. We are the professional. We are helping these customers to not have to worry about this stress so that they can just keep going on with their process and on with their lives. And then the last thing on the seller side would be a closing day. This is a period of nostalgia and transition. So a no-cost thing, again, would be a handwritten thank you note or a framed photo of the home. And this is what I was going to talk about previously. What you might do is have a photo of the home, and don't use the photo from the MLS. Take your own photo, but then send it to an artist. One of the agents yesterday mentioned that she went to Etsy and had somebody on Etsy take that photo and paint it in watercolor. So again, this goes back to the customer that's like nostalgic about their home or emotionally attached to it. This is something that you could do, that you could provide to let them keep a piece of that home as they move on to the next chapters of their lives. Again, it's not super expensive, but it's something that's meaningful. Something else is there are artists that will take a photo of their pet and they turn it into a painting. Something like that. People love their pets. They love their kids. You could do something like that as a nice, thoughtful gift maybe this is somebody who's not emotionally attached to their home. They wouldn't really want a picture of their home, but they would love a portrait, a painted portrait of their pet. Think about things like that. Custom watercolor painting of the home, a memory book using listing photos. Again, if you're on the listing side and you have rights to the photos, you could absolutely do this. Or a restaurant gift card for their first night in their new place. Now, I always hesitate with this because gift cards feel impersonal. So what I would say is try to find out what their favorite meal is at their favorite restaurant and just show up the night before, or when they're doing their final walkthrough, show up with dinner with their favorite meal and just have it there for them. We want to honor the significance of the home that has been in their lives. So again, these are by no means intended to be a script or anything else. This is just to get you thinking about this process in your business as to what are those emotional key points that are going to occur in that transaction where you could elevate that experience. That's the takeaway here. So I challenge you to write some of these down. Think about a transaction that you've recently gone through or one that you're currently working through. Think about all of the times that you have touched that customer, from the first phone call to the first showing, the second showing, the 37th showing, finally getting them under contract, whatever the case may be. Think through this process in your business and figure out ways that you could work to elevate this experience and make this something that's unforgettable so that you get those stark, raving, loyal fans who absolutely would never work with another customer or another agent, rather. One of the things I wanted to go back to real quick on this favorite things, one of the one in here is your favorite sports team. I've actually had agents who, if the customer was like a huge, let's just say Tampa Bay Bucks fan or a Rays or Lightning or something else, or maybe they're a like New York Red Sox fan and they're moving to Tampa. What the agent has done is actually gotten them tickets to the next Rays and Yankees game or Rays and Red Sox or the next Lightning game, depending on what's in season and things like that, who's playing at the time. That's something that you might think about. Or maybe you find a piece of memorabilia. If you know that they're, a Tim Tebow fan, for example, you might find a piece of Tim Tebow memorabilia that you would give to them. It doesn't always have to be specific to the home. It can be something that is impactful and meaningful, like, oh, holy cow, how did you remember that I was a Tebow fan? Oh, well, I actually got this, favorite things sheet at the very beginning, and you don't tell them this. But just these are the types of things that you want to do to make yourself stand out. There's a lot of different opportunities in here. Favorite hobby, favorite colors. Like, you can be super creative with this to apply it in whatever way makes sense for you. But I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a roadmap, something that you can use to determine how you want to grow your business and how you want to do unreasonable hospitality to become the best real estate agent in Tampa Bay so that you have all the business that you could ever want to have. So I'll leave you guys with that. If there's anything I can do, any questions that you have, anything that comes up in this process, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk through it and brainstorm with you and get you guys into success. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch this, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Thanks.